Okay, today we're going to pull back the curtain to hear one person's perspective on working in the sex industry. Sakina Millington says the job broke her heart and made her become completely numb, living like the walking dead. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
I think it's interesting to look behind the curtain to see what it's really like. I mean, when you started working, you started in a massage parlor, and you found the women there very cold. So what did you learn about that?
When I was working in the massage parlors, it was presented to me so differently. It was presented to me like that it was exciting and you're going to be in control and you're going to have power and you're going to feel empowered. And it wasn't like that when you get there. You start to feel all this shame and you start to feel numb and you start to feel really disconnected.
Wow, and in order to kind of fight those feelings, you created this kind of alter ego that was really tough and confident, but you weren't feeling that way at all underneath. Tell me about those kind of two personalities that you're living in.
I feel like to deal with it, you have to create another person. Like on the inside, Sakina was insecure, she was ashamed, she was broken, she felt abandoned, she was lonely, but I had to create the alter ego, which was Eva, that was my worker name, and I was presenting myself as confident, as powerful, as in control, and I wasn't the case.
And, you at the time, I think, subscribed to that theory that a lot of people say, like, you can use sex, in the sex industry, you can use sex as power over men in a sense. But now looking back on it, you don't see it that way at all. So what was really going on?
At the time, I thought I was the one who was in control and had the power because I was making the money, but I'm like, I'm the one who's the product. I'm being purchased. So who really has the power and who really has the control?
So what is it doing on the inside of you as time went on? Was it just in massage parlors or did it go beyond that?
I was mostly massage parlor, but it was also stripping at the same time. And then it trickled over to my personal life where I was sleeping around with a lot of people as well.
And what did that do to the inside of you?
It made me just numb. Like I never got to a point of suicide because I already felt dead. And that's not what it looked like on the outside. But on the inside, I was just cold and I was broken.
So those women, when you first started, you thought, wow, these women are so cold. You actually became like them.
Exactly.
Just to survive.
Yes.
So no little girl ever says, my dream in life is to go into the sex industry, but so many do. So tell me a little bit about the sequence of events that started from the beginning of your life, that started you down that road.
Well, growing up, I grew up in a single-parent home with just my mom, and around the age 9 years old, my mom actually relapsed into street drugs, and I got a rude reality check. And going through my childhood, me, my mom, and my younger sister, she was in and out of the household, she was in and off the streets. And going through high school, I started to cope with boyfriends and drugs and alcohol and sex. And eventually, at the age of about 19, is when a girlfriend introduced me to the sex industry.
Wow. And it wasn't just the addiction that your mom was dealing with and all the tumult that brought to your life. You also experienced racism. So tell me a little bit about what that looked like for you.
Well, it was a lot of difficulties with just growing up in my color because we used to live in Toronto, which is very multicultural, and then we moved up past Newmarket, and I was the only black girl in my school. So it was like, can I touch your hair? Or one time I was called burnt toast, or just trying to fit in. And that's when I guess the alter ego or displaying myself different from what the inside is started.
So you had to be overconfident to survive in a sense.
Even if I didn't really feel that way.
Wow. Okay, so you started really getting introduced to men as you got older, not just in the massage parlor, but just men in general. Tell me about just that search for your identity, for love, really, and where it took you.
And that's exactly it. It was a search for unconditional love and that sense of not wanting to be abandoned. And the more I would search for it, the more people I had to occupy trying to find it, and every time it would slip away. It happened with my mother, it happened with my father, and then it started happening with the men. And I tried to grip onto it with the sex and with the control.
And, when you're looking for love, I mean, that's a very genuine search, and I think we all want that. We're all created with that. I want to be loved, I want to be special. Did you start thinking, there's something wrong with me, or why can't I find it? Or were you like, no, these men are terrible?
I didn't think there was something wrong with me. I just thought that this is the way it was. That everybody would feel like this, that was a cold world. So I wasn't the only one who was like that.
So did you think that love didn't exist, or the kind of love that you see in movies didn't exist?
Yes, 100%.
So that's a tough way to live if you think there's no hope, and that the world is just cold and without love. How did you get up every day? What motivated you to keep going?
It's trying to fill those voids, right? With the money, with the partying, with the drugs, with the alcohol and the sex. And the sad thing with that is it keeps leaking out. And you always have to go back for more, and you never get that satisfaction. You never get that void filled.
Wow, that's really tough. Okay, I want to continue with your story. We're going to talk about a voice that you heard. So normally hearing voice is not such a good thing. This voice was a good voice. This voice changed her life. We're going to talk about that when we come back. We are back with Sakina Millington. Her rough childhood led her to the sex industry, and really, you say, led you to feel dead. So tell me about, and I found it so interesting what you said, is that you weren't tempted to commit death by suicide. You already felt like you were dead.
Felt numb.
So when did you finally hit rock bottom? Like, what was the thing that really was the end?
I remember when I was just like, all this sleeping around and all this partying is not doing it for me. And I was driving in the car actually, and I heard a voice, and it said, "You have a purpose. There's more for you." And at this point, I thought I was crazy, and I was like, I think God's talking to me.
Wow. And did you believe in God up to that point, or what?
No, not at all.
So you don't believe in God at all, but you hear a voice. Like, so how does that work? You think it's God? It was just so different that you thought this has to be God? Or?
Yes, because it was like a light voice and an empowering voice, and it wasn't like putting me to fear or shame. It was making me feel like loved.
Wow. So what was that like to feel love? You just said that you didn't believe that there was love in the world, or the kind of love that people talk about. What was that feeling like?
I started to feel drawn to it. I started to feel like a hunger that I couldn't describe, and I wanted more of it. I started to search.
So you find yourself in a club with a friend in the bathroom, and she's telling you about God. So tell me, set the scene for me.
So I was not a believer at this point, and I had a girlfriend who was, and she was just starting to experience it. And she went out with me that night, and we were in the bathroom for a really long time. And I told her my experience, and from there, she's just sharing with me, like, God loves you, you need to meet him, like, come out to church with me. And that was the beginning of my search.
Wow. So she invites you to church, you say yes.
Yes.
So what was your feelings as you're getting ready to go to church that morning? Were you nervous? Were you excited?
The church service, I actually ended up, it wasn't the church she told me to go. It wasn't a Sunday morning because I would work Saturday evenings. I went to an evening service, and it was so miraculous. There was a young evangelist preaching, and there was hundreds of people. And out of all the hundreds of people, he points to me, and he's like, "You don't have to feel any shame anymore." And I was like, whoa, that's when it got personal. I'm like, this is God. He knows me. It wasn't just somebody people talk about. So that night I went up to the altar, and he told me, God knows you, and he doesn't want you to feel shame, and he loves you. And that was the night I gave my life to Christ.
Wow. And so for people who have never experienced this, tell me about that process, giving your life to Christ. What is that like?
It was making the decision that I'm going to live for you, and I'm going to trust you, and I know you're not going to leave me. So I just said it in my heart, and I declared it out loud that, Jesus, I want to live for you, I want to know you, and I want to be with you.
Okay, so when you said that, what happened?
I just felt like something come alive. I felt like all the numbness, all the brokenness, it was gone, and I just felt unashamed. I felt full of joy, and I felt fully alive.
Wow, that's so amazing.
That's where it started.
So that's the beginning.
Yes.
And some people I know experience instantly, like everything changes, but sometimes for most of us, it's going to be a process. So tell me about the process then after that.
After that, like I said, my spirit came alive, and I started to feel joy, and I started to feel confident, I started to feel connected to God. But the whole process definitely took some time. I ended up landing in a church that I'm in now. It's called Kingdom Impact, and it was just so much vulnerability there, and I started to feel God's presence, and I started to hear other people's stories, and I started to renew my mind in the Word, and I started to experience worship. So my spirit coming alive happened all at once, but the journey to get to know God and to find out who I am and to find my purpose is still happening, and it's amazing.
Wow. So you had this transformation, but I would assume you're still working in a massage parlor at that point, or your employment is still doing other things, correct?
After I gave my life to Christ that night, maybe within the next week or two, I totally walked away from the sex industry, and I didn't know what it was going to look like, but I knew it had to happen. I knew that I was valuable, and I knew that I was loved.
I love that. And I think what's really cool about your story, and I don't want to move on without making this point, is, you didn't have to quit your job or become perfect overnight or any of that. Talk to me about what grace means to you and how you met God just where you're at.
Grace means everything to me because Jesus met me where I was. He met me where I was at, and he didn't leave me there. So I didn't have to feel cleaned up. I didn't have to feel perfect. I didn't have to be in a certain position. He came for me, and then he brought me on the journey with him.
And, you know, you now work with people trying to encourage them on their journey, especially women.
Yes.
How do you think God sees all of us on our journey, those of us who are very far away and like you don't even think that he exists? How does he see them?
I feel like he sees them and he knows them personally, and he wants to meet them where they are. And he doesn't have an expectation of, be like this before I love you. He's like, just come to me. Just come to me how you are, and we're going to get through it together.
I love that. Talk to me about Sakina before you prayed that prayer and Sakina today. Who are these two people?
Sakina before was just insecure. She was ashamed. She was always needing attention. She was lonely. She felt abandoned. And now I'm just at peace. I feel free. And that's the most important point, is that I'm free. I don't have judgments. I don't have shame. And I'm just loved. And I want every young woman, I want every young man to know that Christ wants that for them as well. He wants to engage them and love them.
What did the people in your life who knew you before, as they watched this transformation happen, what are they thinking?
I think they're shocked because they're like, you really? And I'm like, it could be for you too. It's for anybody. Jesus is for everybody.
So they didn't think you were a likely person for this?
Last candidate on the list.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so you do this work now called Total Women Transformation. Tell me about that.
Yes, I do Total Women Development, and it's basically trying to reach young women in the community who feel like they're not good enough or feel lost, who feel stuck. And we just host different events. You know, we just like to hang out. We like to do like YouTube videos. We just like to meet people where they're at and just be authentic about it, that we're all in this together.
I love that. And now, of course, you're married. So you married Ezra Millington. He was a former Argonaut. Tell me a little bit about how you guys met, how that came about.
How we met is actually pretty radical. We both heard from God separately. He was actually at our church, and the pastor prophesied over him, in 3 days you're going to meet somebody. At the time, he didn't know it's me. And I had a dream 3 days before, saying in the dream, in a vision, saying that you're going to marry a football player. And then 3 days later, we met at a mutual friend's party, and it just all changed from there.
And you knew he was the one that you had heard about?
Yes.
Wow.
Our minds were blown.
I love that. So for someone watching today who's like, you know, that's your story, Sakina, but I'm too far gone. I can't change my life. I can't stop doing the things that I'm doing. And I don't know if this would work for me. What would you say to them?
I would say you're not too far gone, because I thought the same thing. And you don't have to stop. Just meet Jesus first, and he's going to be there to hold your hand and to love you and to guide you.
Love it. Thank you so much for coming to share your story today.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so if you're watching this is my challenge for you today. If you're not sure that God exists, if you've never given God a chance in your life, and if you know what you're doing is not working, then just do one thing for me. Just say, God, if you're real, show yourself to me. That is it. That's all you have to do. And that prayer can absolutely change your life. And if you're ready to actually pray that with someone else, or even talk to somebody else about what you're going through or where you're at on your journey with God, we would love to be that resource for you. You don't even have to give your name. It's 100% confidential. And there are the most wonderful people on the other end of those prayer lines. That number is 1-866-273-4444. Stay with us.